Semper Tyrannis, shouted John Wilkes Booth as he jumped from the theater box where he had just shot American President Abraham Lincoln. It's a phrase that has echoed through history. Shakespeare has Caesar looking at Brutus as he's stabbed, saying, "Et tu, Brute?" Although this was likely not what was actually said, it was rather the spirit of the whole thing, though, and so it has come down to us as something culturally relative today, as it was when the play was first performed in 1599. In any case, assassination attempts seem to be all the rage at the moment, with American President Donald Trump being targeted more than usual. After the White House Correspondents' Dinner, shooting attempt number 3, for those keeping count, tweets and retweets about Trump being targeted more than any president in modern memory began to proliferate. And while that may be true in America, with the latest shooting putting Trump above Gerald Ford in shots fired and further ahead in actual security incidents, it's a big world. And assassination attempts, not uncommon. Fidel Castro famously survived, according to the Cuban government's account, about 600 assassination attempts, including exploding or poisoned cigars, diving suits covered with deadly fungus, and poisoned desserts. These weren't all carried out, but it definitely shows the lengths to which certain folks wanted Castro dead. Even the mafia were brought in on the game, although I'm not sure what the Cuban government's criteria for assassination attempt is. Castro did actually survive more than the usual number of incidents. The devil's own luck, it was described by more than a few of his haters. As interesting as exploding cigars and deadly diving suits may be, I have to admit that my personal all-time favorite episode in the genre of modern assassination attempts falls to Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana. Now, Nkrumah was no stranger to barely escaping assassination attempts. He survived 5 major attempts during his stint as Ghana's president, and police records record about 34 more, which didn't come as close to getting rid of the non-aligned nation's leader. In 1962, hospital treatment was required to move shrapnel from the president's butt inside after a bomb attack, which severely disfigured a small child. A little over a year later, another assassination attempt against Nkrumah very nearly succeeded, and it has come down in history as my absolute favorite presidential response to someone trying to kill them. On January 2nd, 1964, Nkrumah was leaving his office in a building called Flagstaff House for lunch. He had 2 security guards with him, but the police personnel who generally kind of populated the area were strangely absent. The reason for this soon became clear. A shot rang out from very close at hand. Nkrumah's driver and one of his security guards kind of melted away. His other security guard, attempting to get control of the situation and protect the president, put his head up and was immediately shot and killed. Another bullet whizzed through Nkrumah's shirt and was seemingly deflected off his bulletproof vest. From that moment, Ghana's president, Kwame Nkrumah, was on his own, with no protection, while an active shooter took aim. The acting assassin attempted to fire a 5th time, but his gun jammed. And whether Nkrumah heard or saw this has never actually been established, but he didn't hesitate. He began running across the square toward the man who had just killed his security guard. Police and military officers now surrounded the square, but none jumped in to help yet. The assassin attempted to hit Nkrumah with the rifle butt, but perhaps because Ghana can get quite hot, the rifle actually slipped out of his hands. What followed was the sort of street fight one does not usually expect to see world leaders engaged in outside of various parliaments, most notably Taiwan. The assassin attempted to Mike Tyson Nkrumah, but succeeded only in biting his cheek. Nkrumah responded by kicking the assassin in the baby maker, which then made him collapse. And it was at this point that the police and military finally decided a TKO had been dished out and they should join the fray. The assassin was knocked out, and Nkrumah left the scene to be seen and patched up by a doctor. When he was patched up, he returned and posed for triumphant photos, reenacting a few moments within the fight and striking the stance of a triumphant prize fighter over the unconscious would-be assassin. The attempted assassin, it turned out, was actually an active constable in the Ghanaian services. From this point on, the army would be responsible for Nkrumah's security until he was removed by a coup in 1966. In a report about the event, the British High Commissioner wrote to the Foreign Secretary, "Though President Nkrumah appears to have largely lost the mass appeal which originally swept him into power, he still has a considerable personal magnetism conveyed through bright eyes and an infectious smile, which can affect not only individuals, but on occasion, groups of people like Parliament. He often appears to agree with anyone who is talking to him, thus at least temporarily ingratiating himself, only to adopt or get others to adopt for him a totally different course later on. Though he still therefore deludes the few with the charm, he is in fact, for this and other reasons, a most dangerous man. He's exceptionally vain, he's spiteful, impatient of argument, and deceitful. He gives an impression at times of helplessness and weakness and of being pushed around by his advisors. Part of this is due to the muddle in his own mind. He's not a good administrator and does not understand economics. Part of it is undoubtedly a pose. Insane assassination attempts were not limited to Ghana or even Africa by any means. The once and never again king of Albania, Zog, lived under intense pressure of death. By some accounts, he survived more than 50 assassination attempts and had hundreds of blood feuds chasing him. He was shot at, and would only eat food prepared by his mother for fear of poison. If there was one thing King Zog was good at doing, it was making enemies and avoiding assassination. At one point, reminiscent of Teddy Roosevelt, he was shot in the chest and demanded to continue his speech before going to the hospital for treatment. In 1931, Zog was in Vienna for medical treatment. He smoked between 150 and 250 cigarettes per day and would wake up in the middle of the night just to smoke, and decided he needed to attend a night at the Vienna Opera. When the opera concluded, Zog left the building and walked to his car, shocked to suddenly see the head of his bodyguard explode next to him. The scene unfolded quickly. One of the military entourage from Albania surrounding Zog came out firing, and he was also shot. A rather fat major stepped in front of the extremely skinny Zog to shield him, also taking a bullet. But this bullet was actually deflected off his ceremonial dagger. Local Viennese were absolutely incensed that someone would dare to shoot at a world leader at their opera house. And it was local residents who actually took down the two assassins and beat them mercilessly while waiting for police to take them into custody. Zog himself managed to slip away back to his rooms at the Hotel Imperial. The would-be assassins were Albanians as well and had previous connections with Zog. If they had been Zog's lovers, it would have been classified as a crime of passion. In any case, it was certainly spillover from Zog's rule within Albania. And if we're being completely honest, Zog himself had dabbled, or more than dabbled, in hiring assassins for his competitors, which is how he was connected to the men attempting to assassinate him. It was all a vicious circle, cycle, and spider web of feuds and temper colored in with poisons and guns, and also a few bombs. Anyway, Zog was done with that sort of public danger. He returned to Albania and sequestered himself in highly guarded palaces as much as possible, leaving Albania only when it was invaded by Italy in 1939. From safety in Greece, he declared, "We prefer to die from the littlest child to the oldest man to show our independence is not for sale." Again, a statement made from the safety of Greece, which was not lost on those who heard him say it. Zog evaded assassinations and blood feuds and died in 1961 in France when he was 65 years old. Although, I have to say, how anyone who smokes 250 cigarettes a day makes it to 65 is a mystery to me. Props, man. I can't even figure out how there's enough time in the day to smoke 250 cigarettes. I'm pretty sure we're in double fisting territory at this point. We could go on and on with this. There were the final gasps of the Manson family going after Gerald Ford in 1975, and Ford's own self-assassination attempts involved throwing himself down the stairs of Air Force One. Okay, that's not true. He didn't do that on purpose, and to be completely fair to President Ford, my own track record with stairs is probably much worse. Teddy Roosevelt, as we previously mentioned, took a shot to the chest and continued a rather long speech. Charles de Gaulle pissed a lot of folks off and has more than 30 recorded assassination attempts against him, including poisoned gifts. The argument could be made that Rasputin survived his assassination attempt since it took a frozen river to finally off the holy man's sex pest. The absolute brazen survival of the King of Morocco in 1972 when rebels attempted to shoot down his plane should also go down in legend. Apparently, after the flight was fired upon, the king took himself to the radio and messaged, "Don't shoot! The tyrant is dead!" He was not dead. But the conspirators soon were. Legendary. I know we quote Shakespeare quite a lot around here, almost as much as we say, everything old is new again. It was a rough night, Macbeth says after killing King Duncan. I'm sure thousands of years of assassins would agree.
What to do?